The Galactic Military Academy floated in space like a giant metal flower. Inside its walls, young soldiers from across the galaxy trained to protect their worlds. Students with scales, fur, crystals, and strange colors filled the hallways. They came from hundreds of different planets, each species proud of their strength. In Classroom 7, Instructor Valen pointed at the hologram showing battle tactics. 40 students watched carefully. Well, 39 watched carefully. In the back corner, almost hidden in shadow, sat Mira Chen. She was human, the only one in her class. Mira took notes quietly. Her pen moved across the paper, recording everything. But no one looked at her. No one asked her questions. To the other students, she was like a ghost. There, but not really there. Cadet Krovar Valen called out. "What would you do in this situation?" Krovar stood up, his 4 massive arms flexing. He was Draxian, a warrior species known across the galaxy. His skin was thick like armor and his eyes glowed red. "I would charge the enemy position with full force. Draxian strength would break their lines in minutes." The other students nodded with respect. Krovar was the best fighter in their class. He had won every combat exercise, broken every strength record. "Good answer," Valen said. Then his eyes swept the room and landed on the back corner. "Cadet Chen, what would you do?" Mira looked up slowly. Several students turned around as if surprised she was even there. Some had forgotten a human was in their class at all. "I would study the enemy patrol patterns first," Mira said quietly. Her voice was so soft that some students had to lean forward to hear. "Find the weak points. Attack when they are most vulnerable." Krovar laughed, a deep booming sound. Typical human answer. Always hiding, always afraid to fight with honor. A few other students chuckled. Mira said nothing. She just wrote something in her notebook and looked down Celis. A Thelian with skin like crystal that sparkled in the light whispered to her friend, "Why do they even allow humans here? They are so weak. Their bones break easily. They cannot breathe many atmospheres. They move so slowly compared to us." "Politics," her friend whispered back. "Humans just joined the coalition. Someone important wanted them included. But look at her scores. She barely passes anything." It was true. Myra's scores were never impressive. In combat simulations, she performed okay but never great. In strength tests, she ranked near the bottom. In speed trials, she was average at best. She did just enough to not fail. During lunch, the cafeteria buzzed with noise and energy. Students from different worlds shared stories and competed over who had the best warrior traditions. Krovar's table was always the loudest, filled with the strongest fighters. Mira sat alone at a small table in the corner. She ate her meal slowly, a simple human food that looked boring compared to the exotic dishes others enjoyed. Once, a group of students had invited her to sit with them, but they had done it as a joke, laughing when she actually came over. She had not made that mistake again. "Class assignments for next week," Valen announced after lunch. "You will work in groups of 4 to analyze historical battles." Students quickly formed groups with their friends. Within minutes, everyone had a team. Everyone except Mira. She stood by her desk waiting. "Cadet Chen needs a group," Valen said, looking around. No one volunteered. Finally, Valen assigned her to a group that already had 4 members. They would now have 5, and none of them looked happy about it. "Great," one of them muttered. "Now we have to do extra work to make up for the human." That afternoon, physical training took place in the combat arena. Students practiced with weapons and hand-to-hand fighting. Krovar moved like a storm, his 4 arms making him nearly impossible to beat. Celis used her crystal body to calculate every move perfectly. Dodging attacks before they came, when Mira's turn came, she fought adequately. She blocked some attacks, landed a few hits, but nothing special. Her opponent, a 3-eyed Kelton, defeated her after 2 minutes. It was respectable, but not memorable. Again, the human shows us why her species will never be great warriors, Krovar announced loudly, making sure everyone heard. They are better suited for farming or simple labor. Instructor Valen frowned at the comment but said nothing. Rules were rules. Humans had been allowed into the academy, but that did not mean they would be treated as equals. They had to prove themselves, and so far, Mira had proven nothing. As the day ended, students headed to their quarters. Mira walked alone through the corridors. Other cadets passed her in groups, laughing and talking. None of them spoke to her. In her small room, Mira sat at her desk. She pulled out a small photograph from a locked drawer. It showed her in different armor, standing with other soldiers on some distant battlefield. She looked at it for a long moment, then put it away. On her computer screen, a message appeared. War History Symposium in 3 days. Attendance, mandatory. Topic, the Void War. Declassified footage will be shown. Mira stared at the message. Her hand trembled slightly as she closed the notification. She went to her window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there were the battlefields where she had fought. The places where she had been someone different. But here in this academy, she was nobody. A ghost that no one saw. She preferred it that way. For now. Hash. The ghost of the classroom until the war footage revealed she was the ultimate warrior. Hash hash. Part 2. The footage begins. The Academy's grand auditorium was filled with over 200 cadets. Everyone from all 5 training classes had gathered for the War History Symposium. This was an important event that happened once each year. Today, they would watch real footage from actual wars. Mira sat in the back row, as always. She had arrived early to get the corner seat where shadows fell. Students filled the rows in front of her, excited and loud. They talked about famous battles and legendary warriors. "I heard they will show footage from the Void War," said a cadet with green scales. "That war was brutal," another replied. "My grandfather fought in it. He said it was the closest we came to losing everything." The lights dimmed. On the massive screen at the front, an image appeared. Admiral Vex walked onto the stage. He was Korthon, a species known for their tactical genius. His uniform displayed dozens of medals from various battles. "Cadets," Admiral Vex began, his voice strong and clear. "Today, you will witness history. The Void War lasted 5 years. It was the most terrible conflict our galaxy has ever known. The Kethrak swarm attacked without warning, without mercy. They destroyed entire star systems. Billions died. The screen showed images of burning planets, ships exploding in space, soldiers from many species fighting together against the insect-like Kethrak forces. The cadets watched in silence, their earlier excitement gone. "We were losing," Admiral Vex continued. "For 3 years, we lost more battles than we won. Our fleets were crushed. Our colonies fell one by one. Then something changed. New tactics appeared. Ghost soldiers who struck from nowhere. Operatives so skilled that the enemy created special weapons just to fight them." Krovar leaned forward in his seat. This was the kind of story he loved. Stories of great warriors. The most feared of these ghosts was codenamed Reaper, Admiral Vex said. The screen showed the word in glowing letters. Reaper destroyed 3 Kethrak command ships. Alone, Reaper saved 17 colony worlds. Reaper once held a fortress for 9 days against 5,000 enemies. Gasps filled the auditorium. Even battle-hardened instructors looked impressed. Some say Reaper was not real, a legend created to scare the enemy. But the footage you will see today proves Reaper was very real. Admiral Vex stepped back. "What you are about to watch is declassified combat footage. Some of it is disturbing. All of it is real." The screen went black. Then images appeared, grainy and shaking. The footage came from a helmet camera. A strike team of 12 soldiers moved through a dark corridor inside a Kethrak hive structure. This was the Siege of Calith-9, one of the most famous battles of the war. This mission was supposed to destroy the hive's power core, Admiral Vex narrated. Intelligence said the area was lightly defended. The team moved carefully. Suddenly, the walls exploded. Kethrak warriors poured out from hidden holes. The footage became chaos. Soldiers screamed. Weapons fired in all directions. The camera spun as its owner fell. 6 soldiers died in the first 30 seconds. The others tried to retreat, but Kethrak blocked their escape. It was a perfect ambush. The mission had failed. Then she appeared. A figure in combat armor dropped from above, landing in the middle of the Kethrak formation. The footage was unclear because of smoke and damage, but everyone could see what happened next. The figure moved like water, flowing between enemies. A blade flashed. A Kethrak fell. Then another. The figure had a rifle too, firing with perfect accuracy. Every shot hit. Every movement had purpose. There was no wasted motion, no hesitation. "By the stars," Krovar whispered. "Look at that combat skill." The remaining strike team members rallied. With the mysterious warrior fighting beside them, they pushed forward. The figure led them through the chaos, pointing out enemy positions, calling out tactics. The voice was filtered through the helmet, mechanical and strange. In 4 minutes, the ambush was reversed. 37 Kethrak lay dead. The strike team reached the power core and completed their mission. The footage changed to a different battle. A colony evacuation. Civilian ships trying to escape while Kethrak forces closed in. Again, Reaper appeared. This time, coordinating defensive positions, buying time for the civilians to flee. Celis watched carefully. Her crystal body processed information faster than most species. She studied the way Reaper moved, the body structure visible beneath the armor. Something felt familiar, but she could not identify what. More footage played. Battle after battle. Reaper leading assaults. Reaper appearing behind enemy lines. Reaper saving soldiers who should have died. Each scene showed impossible skill and courage. What species was Reaper? A cadet called out. Admiral Vex paused the footage. That information was classified during the war. Only the highest commanders knew. Most of us assumed Draxian because of the combat prowess. Or perhaps Korthan Heavy Assault class. Krovar nodded proudly. Of course, only the strong species could fight like that. The footage resumed. Now it showed a planetary defense. A small outpost with limited soldiers holding against waves of Kethrak. Reaper was there, organizing the defense while simultaneously managing civilian evacuation. 2 jobs at once, both done perfectly. The camera caught Reaper giving orders. The voice came through clearly, despite the helmet's filter. Calm, focused. With a slight accent that some languages had, Celis's crystal skin flickered with light. The way it did when Thalians were thinking hard. She turned slowly to look at the back of the auditorium. At the corner where Mira Chen sat in shadow, the footage showed Reaper after the battle, covered in dirt and blood. Walking through a decontamination chamber. For just 3 seconds, Reaper removed the helmet to breathe. The image was corrupted, pixelated, unclear. But it was enough. Enough to see the face. Human face, female, young. Celis's eyes went wide. She looked again at Mira, then back at the screen. Her perfect memory compared the 2 faces, the body structure, the way they moved. They were the same person. Other cadets were starting to notice too. Whispers began spreading through the auditorium. Students turned to look at the back row, at the quiet human girl who never spoke, who barely passed her tests, who everyone ignored. Myra sat completely still. Her face showed nothing, but her hands, hidden under her desk, were clenched so tight her knuckles turned white. The footage continued playing, but nobody was watching anymore. All eyes had turned to the ghost in the back corner. The invisible student who suddenly seemed very, very visible, the ghost of the classroom, until the war footage revealed she was the ultimate warrior, Part 3. Recognition. The whispers grew louder. Students pointed toward the back row. Some pulled out their data tablets, comparing images from the footage to the humans sitting in the shadows. The mathematics was simple. The evidence was clear. Celis stood up, her crystal body glowing bright with realization. "It is her," she said loudly enough for half the auditorium to hear. The body structure, the movement patterns, the voice. "That is Cadet Chen." More heads turned. Krovar's forearms gripped his seat. "Impossible," he growled. "Humans are weak. They cannot fight like that." But doubt crept into his voice, because the footage did not lie. And now that they were looking for it, the similarities were obvious. The way Reaper moved in the videos matched the way Mira walked through the academy halls. Quiet, efficient, taking up as little space as possible. Admiral Vex noticed the disturbance in the crowd. He paused the footage and followed the cadet's stairs. When his eyes found Mira Chen in the back corner, his expression transformed completely. His military posture somehow became even more rigid. He placed his fist over his heart in a salute rarely given to anyone. "Cadets," Admiral Vex said, his voice cutting through the whispers like a blade. "It appears some of you have made a connection." "You are correct." The auditorium went completely silent. Even the instructors leaned forward. "Cadet Chen," Admiral Vex continued, "would you please come to the front?" For a long moment, Mira did not move. She sat in her corner seat, her face still showing nothing. Then slowly, she stood. As she walked down the aisle between the seats, something changed about her. The invisible student faded away. Her shoulders straightened. Her steps became precise, measured, the walk of a soldier, not a cadet. Every eye followed her. Students who had laughed at her now pressed back in their seats as she passed. There was something different about her now. Something that had always been there but hidden. Something dangerous. She reached the stage and stood beside Admiral Vex. She did not salute. She did not need to. She stood at ease, like an equal, not a student. "Class," Admiral Vex said formally, "allow me to properly introduce Commander Mira Chen, recipient of the Void Star with Nova Cluster, the Coalition's highest military honor. The soldier you have been watching on screen is standing before you." The silence was so complete that the hum of the station's life support systems could be heard. Krovar shot to his feet, his red eyes blazing. "No, this is wrong. Humans are weak. They need special equipment just to survive standard training. They cannot even breathe the air on half our worlds. How could a human be the greatest warrior of the war?" Mira turned to look at him. When she spoke, her voice was no longer quiet or soft. It carried across the entire auditorium with absolute confidence. "You are right, Cadet Krovar. Humans are weak compared to most species. Your bones are twice as dense as ours. Your muscles are 3 times stronger. You have redundant organs that let you survive wounds that would kill us instantly." Krovar nodded, vindicated. But Mira was not finished. "That is exactly why we are dangerous," she continued. "Every species in this room has natural advantages. Strength, speed, armor, regeneration. You were born with these gifts, so you depend on them. Humans have nothing. We are soft. We break easily, so we learn to fight differently." She walked across the stage, her movements now clearly military. "We learned that being underestimated is the greatest weapon of all. While you assumed we were helpless, we were watching, learning, adapting. You see weakness and dismiss us. We see weakness and study how to exploit it." A cadet near the front raised a tentacle nervously. "But the footage shows you fighting dozens of Kethrak at once. How does a weak species do that?" Mira smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "Humans evolved as hunters on our home world. Not the strongest hunters. Not the fastest. But the most persistent. We could track prey for days across vast distances. We could coordinate with our pack using only small signals. We could use tools, terrain, and psychology to bring down animals 10 times our size." She pointed at the frozen image on the screen. "When you brought us to the stars, we did not stop being hunters. We just found bigger prey. Kethrik warriors are strong and fast, but they follow patterns. They have instincts. Instincts can be predicted. Predicted means exploited." Admiral Vex activated the footage again. Commander Chen personally trained the first 3 generations of Coalition Special Forces. She wrote the manual on asymmetric warfare that every Spec Ops unit now uses. The tactics you study in your classes, many came from her after-action reports. The screen showed more battles now. Not just Reaper, but other human operatives. They moved like ghosts through enemy territory. They appeared where sensors said nothing was there. They turned enemies into allies with just words. They won battles without firing a shot. After the Void War, Admiral Vex explained, Coalition intelligence had to redesign all security protocols. Not because of Draxian strength or Thelian intellect, because human operatives kept getting past every defense we created. They studied our patterns, found our blind spots, exploited our assumptions. Sella spoke up, her voice filled with confusion. But Commander, your test scores here are barely passing. You lose combat simulations. You show no exceptional abilities. Because I was not trying to win, Mira answered simply. I was trying to blend in. To be invisible? To be underestimated. It is what humans do best. She turned to address all the cadets. Every species here is proud of their warrior traditions. You should be. Your ancestors fought with honor and courage. But honor and courage are not always enough. Sometimes you need something else. Sometimes you need to be the threat that no one sees coming. Krovar sat down slowly, his forearms trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from the complete reversal of everything he had believed. The weak human he had mocked was the legend every warrior in the galaxy respected. The Kethrak swarm had a saying about Reaper, Admiral Vex added. Translated, it means the death that walks unseen. They created special weapons, special protocols, special training, all to counter one human. They failed. Do you know why? No one answered. The auditorium waited. So by the time they saw her, Admiral Vex said quietly, it was already too late. That is the lesson humans teach us. Power is not always about strength. Sometimes the most dangerous warrior is the one you never knew was there. The footage continued playing on the screen. Battle after battle. Victory after victory. And now, the cadets watched with new understanding. They were not watching supernatural skill or impossible abilities. They were watching a human doing what humans did best. Hunting. The ghost of the classroom until the war footage revealed she was the ultimate warrior. Part 4. The truth emerges. The footage shifted to show a different kind of battle. Not a massive fleet engagement or a fortress siege. This was something smaller but somehow more terrifying. A single operative, Reaper, infiltrating a Kethrak breeding facility. Deep inside enemy territory. This mission was considered suicide, Admiral Vex narrated. The facility was protected by 3,000 Kethrak warriors. Guard towers every 50 meters. Sensors covering every approach. No one had ever successfully entered one of these facilities and survived.
Ow.
The cadets watched as the camera followed Reaper's approach. She moved during a sandstorm, using the weather to blind the sensors. She crawled for 3 hours across open ground, so slowly that motion detectors never triggered. When guards passed within meters of her position, she simply became another rock in the landscape. 17 hours, Mira said from the stage, her voice distant with memory. That is how long the infiltration took. Most species cannot stay motionless that long. Their muscles cramp. Their minds wander. But humans can. We evolved to hunt by waiting. Patience is our natural weapon. The footage showed Reaper inside the facility, moving through corridors like a shadow. She avoided patrols, disabled security systems without leaving traces, and planted explosives in critical locations. Then she did something unexpected. She freed the prisoners held there, over 200 soldiers from various species. Save them, a cadet said with awe. But that made your escape harder. Why risk it? Mira looked at the cadet. Because humans do not just fight to win. We fight for what we believe is right. Those prisoners were someone's family, someone's friends. Leaving them to die was not acceptable. The escape sequence played. Reaper leading 200 weakened prisoners through enemy territory while Kethrak forces closed in from all sides. She used the explosives to create chaos, then guided her group through the confusion. When they reached the extraction point, enemy forces had it surrounded. This is where I thought I would die, Mira said quietly. We were trapped. No ammunition left, no way out. On screen, Reaper did something that made several cadets gasp. She walked out alone, hands raised, toward the Kethrak forces. She surrendered herself to buy time for the prisoners to find another escape route. The Kethrak commander wanted to capture Reaper alive, Admiral Vex explained. It was a mistake. They thought they had one. The footage showed Reaper in Kethrak custody, bound and surrounded by guards. She looked defeated, broken. Then her eyes met the camera one last time, and there was something in that look, a hunter's patience. 3 days later, the entire Kethrak command structure in that sector collapsed. Reaper had not been captured. She had infiltrated their leadership. During those 3 days, she had gathered intelligence, sabotaged their communications, and turned several of their commanders against each other with carefully planted evidence. By the time they realized what happened, Mira said, their entire operation was in chaos. The prisoners escaped. The facility was destroyed. And I walked out through the front door while they were fighting each other. Krovar's voice was barely a whisper. You turned surrender into a weapon. Turned their assumptions into a weapon, Mira corrected. They assumed a captured enemy was defeated. They assumed someone in chains was helpless. Humans learned long ago that the most dangerous time to underestimate us is when we look weakest. The footage continued with more examples. Human operatives using psychology, social engineering, and patience to achieve victories that raw strength never could. They befriended enemy soldiers and learned their secrets. They waited for weeks in hiding, then struck at the perfect moment. They convinced entire enemy units to defect without firing a shot. This is not the warfare we were taught, Sela said, her crystal skin flickering with confused light. We learn about honor, courage, direct combat. This is effective, Mira finished. War is not about honor. It is about protecting those who cannot protect themselves. It is about stopping evil from spreading. If being honorable means more innocents die, then honor is a luxury we cannot afford. An instructor stood up, an older Draxian with scars covering his body. Commander Chen, I fought in the Void War. I was at the Battle of Tears, where we lost 60,000 soldiers in one day. Then you arrived with 50 human operatives. By the next morning, the Kethrak had retreated. How Mira's expression softened slightly. We did not fight them head-on. We infiltrated their supply lines. We made them think reinforcements were coming from 3 different directions. We convinced their scouts that they were outnumbered 10-1. We used their own communication systems against them, sending false orders that created confusion. By the time they realized what was happening, they were too disorganized to fight effectively. They retreated because they thought they had already lost. You won a battle without a real fight, the instructor said with wonder.
Wow.
The best victories are the ones where nobody has to die, Mira replied. But when death is necessary, we make it quick and efficient. No wasted movement. No unnecessary risk. We are too weak to afford mistakes. Admiral Vex brought up a new image on the screen. A chart showing casualty rates before and after human tactics were integrated into coalition forces. The reduction was dramatic. Human warfare doctrine saved millions of lives, he said. Not just coalition lives, but enemy lives too. Psychological warfare, infiltration tactics, and strategic patience meant fewer direct battles. Fewer deaths on both sides. A young cadet raised a hand timidly. Commander Chen, if you are so skilled, why did you come here to the academy? Why pretend to be a regular cadet? Mira was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight of exhaustion. Because I am tired of fighting. Because the war is over, and I want to help train the next generation without the pressure of reputation. Because when people know who you are, they treat you differently. They see the legend, not the person. She looked around at all the cadets who had ignored her, mocked her, dismissed her. For 3 months, you treated me like I was nobody. It was the most peaceful 3 months I have had in 10 years. No expectations, no pressure. No one asking me to solve impossible problems. I was just a student. It was nice. The auditorium was silent. Many cadets looked down, ashamed of how they had treated her. But now you know, Mira continued, and things will change. That is fine. I came here to teach, even if I did not plan to reveal myself this way. So let me teach you the most important lesson. She stepped forward to the edge of the stage. Strength is important. Intelligence is important, but the most important quality in a warrior is adaptability. The universe will not fight you the way you want to fight. Your enemy will not follow your rules. If you cannot adapt, if you cannot think beyond your training, you will fail. Humans survive because we adapt. We take our weaknesses and turn them into strategies. You can learn to do the same. Admiral Vex saluted her again. Commander Chen has agreed to lead special tactical training for advanced cadets. Those who wish to learn human warfare methods may apply. But I warn you, it will be the hardest training you have ever experienced. Not because it is physically demanding, but because it will challenge everything you believe about combat. Mira smiled slightly. The first lesson starts tomorrow. Come prepared to think differently, or do not come at all. The symposium ended. As cadets filed out, they kept glancing back at the small human woman on stage, the ghost they had never seen. The warrior they never suspected? The legend who had been sitting among them all along, hashed the ghosts of the classroom, till the war footage revealed she was the ultimate warrior, # Part 5, a new understanding the next morning. Mira arrived at classroom 7 at the usual time. She carried the same simple bag she always did. She wore the same plain cadet uniform. She walked to the same corner desk in the back row. But everything was different now. The classroom was already full when she arrived. Students who usually came late had arrived early. Every seat was taken, and they were all watching her. Mira set down her bag and pulled out her notebook, just like always. She opened it to a clean page and prepared to take notes. For a long moment, no one spoke. They just stared. Finally, Krovar stood. The massive Draxian walked across the classroom to where Mira sat. His forearms were at his sides, not aggressive, but his presence filled the space. He stopped at her desk and slowly, carefully, bowed his head in respect. "Commander Chen," he said, his voice rough but sincere, "I was wrong about humans. I was wrong about you. I asked permission to learn from you." Mira looked up at him. Her expression was unreadable. Then she gestured to the empty desk beside her. "Sit. First lesson begins now." Observation. Krovar sat, confused. "What are we observing?" "Watch the others," Myra said quietly. "See how they react to you sitting next to me instead of at your usual dominant position. Notice how the social structure of the class just shifted. That is warfare. Understanding how small changes create large effects?" Krovar turned to look at the class. She was right. Students were whispering, adjusting their seats, creating new group formations based on his move. Power dynamics were shifting in real time. "I never thought of it that way," he admitted. "Never had to," Mira replied. "You are physically dominant. You can solve most problems with strength. But understanding social dynamics, psychology, and how individuals and groups react to change, that is how humans compensate for our physical weakness." Celis approached next, her crystal body shimmering with curiosity. "Commander, my species processes information faster than most. We can calculate thousands of tactical possibilities instantly. How do humans compete with that?" "You think in possibilities," Mira answered. "We think in patterns. Your mind calculates what could happen. Our minds recognize what will happen based on behavior patterns we have seen before. It is not faster, but often it is more accurate because it accounts for the irrational choices that beings make." More students gathered around. The corner desk that had always been isolated was now the center of attention. They asked questions. They wanted to understand. The ghost was no longer invisible. Instructor Valen entered the classroom and stopped in surprise at seeing half the class crowded around Mira's desk. Then he smiled slightly and cleared his throat. "Take your seats," he said. "Today's lesson will be different. Commander Chen has agreed to co-teach this session. We will analyze yesterday's footage using both traditional and human tactical perspectives." The class moved to their seats quickly, but everything had changed. Students sat where they could see Mira clearly. They prepared to actually listen to what she said. Several had even researched human warfare tactics overnight. Valen brought up footage of a fleet battle. Standard question: "How would you engage this enemy formation?" Hands shot up. He called on a Korthon student who suggested a direct assault to break their center. Good traditional tactics? Then he looked at Myra. Commander Chen, what would humans do? Mira studied the formation on the screen. We would avoid the battle entirely. That enemy formation is protecting something. See how they are positioned? That is defensive posture. We would send scouts to discover what they are protecting, then threaten that target. Force them to break formation and come to us where we choose the battlefield. But that could take days, the Korthon student protested. Days of waiting while the enemy prepares. Yes, Mira agreed. Humans are very good at waiting. Most species get impatient. They want to act, to do something. That impatience is a vulnerability we exploit. We wait until you cannot wait anymore. Then you make mistakes. The class continued with Mira, providing alternative perspectives on every scenario. Not always better than traditional tactics, but different. Students began to see that there were multiple ways to solve problems. Strength was one answer, but patience, psychology, and misdirection were others. During lunch, the cafeteria scene was completely different. Mira still sat at the same small corner table, but now Krovar sat across from her. Sela sat beside her. Within minutes, a dozen other students had joined them. Can you teach me to move quietly, like in the footage? One asked. Will you show us infiltration techniques? Another wanted to know. Mira held up her hand. I will teach those who are serious. But understand, human tactics require discipline. You cannot rely on your natural advantages. You must think constantly, adapt constantly. It is mentally exhausting in ways that physical combat is not. I want to learn, Krovar said firmly. Others nodded in agreement. Then training begins tonight, Mira told them. Simulation Room 5. Be prepared to fail. Repeatedly. Human tactics look easy in footage but are very difficult to execute. That evening, 15 cadets showed up at Simulation Room 5. Mira stood at the center of the empty room, looking smaller than ever next to the large aliens around her. First exercise, she said. Move from here to that door without me hearing you. It sounded simple. The cadets spread out and began moving. Within seconds, Mira's eyes tracked to each one. Heard you. Heard you. Heard you. She pointed at each cadet who had made noise. All 15 had failed. Again, she ordered. They tried again. Failed again. And again. For 2 hours, they attempted the simple task. Some grew frustrated. But Mira never grew impatient. She corrected each one, showing them where they had made mistakes. You were thinking about moving quietly, she explained. Instead, think about the environment. Where does sound come from? How does air move? What creates vibration? Become part of the space, not an intruder in it. Slowly, a few cadets began to improve. Krovar, despite his size, managed to cross half the room before Mira detected him. His face showed fierce concentration. Better, Mira said. You are learning to work with your limitations instead of fighting against them. That is the key. Over the following weeks, Mira's training sessions became the most sought after in the academy. Cadets lined up to attend. She taught patience through exercises that seemed impossibly boring. She taught observation by having them watch paint dry and report every change. She taught psychology by making them predict how others would react. This is harder than combat training, one cadet complained after a session. Yes, Mira agreed. Fighting is instinct. Strategy is discipline. Discipline is always harder. In regular classes, dynamics had completely changed. When group projects were assigned, everyone wanted Myra on their team. When she offered alternative tactics, instructors listened seriously. When she spoke, the classroom went silent. One afternoon, Krovar approached her after class. Commander, I have been thinking about what you said, about humans having no natural advantages. But I think you are wrong. Mira raised an eyebrow. Explain. Adaptability is your natural advantage, Krovar said. Every species adapted to their homeworld. We Draxians became strong to survive high gravity and predators. Thelians became intelligent to solve complex environmental challenges, but humans adapted to adaptation itself. You did not specialize. You remained flexible. That is your strength. Mira smiled, a genuine smile. You have learned well. That is exactly right. We are not the best at anything, but we are decent at everything. And when you are fighting for survival, decent at everything beats perfect at one thing. Months passed. The academy year moved toward its end. Mira's students showed remarkable improvement. They thought more carefully. They considered alternatives. They stopped relying only on their natural advantages. On the last day of term, Admiral Vex called Mira to his office. You have changed this academy, he told her. Cadets are graduating with a broader understanding of warfare than any previous class. You have done more good as a teacher than you did as a soldier. I doubt that, Mira replied. As a soldier, I saved lives. As a teacher, I am just giving information. You are showing the next generation that being different is not being weak, Vex corrected. That lesson will save more lives than any battle victory. The graduation ceremony arrived. Cadets from all classes received their assignments to various military units. When Krovar's name was called, he received orders to join an elite strike team. As he walked across the stage, he paused and looked back at where Mira sat with the other instructors. He saluted her, specifically, formally. She saluted back. After the ceremony, students gathered to say goodbye before heading to their assignments. Many came to Mira. They thanked her. They told her how she had changed their thinking. You taught us to see what we were missing, Celis said, her crystal body glowing warm. Not just in tactics, but in how we view others. I will never again assume someone is weak just because they are different. When everyone had left, Mira walked back to classroom 7 one final time. She went to her corner desk in the back row, the desk where she had sat invisible for months. She ran her hand across its surface. A ghost no more. A legend revealed. A teacher who changed everything. She had come to the academy to escape her reputation. Instead, she had built something better. Not by being a warrior, but by teaching others to think like one. Mira smiled to herself and walked out of the empty classroom. Tomorrow would bring new students, new challenges, new opportunities to teach. The war was over. But the mission of protecting others, of preparing the next generation, that mission would never end, and she was exactly where she needed to be. The ghost in the corner had finally found her true calling.